Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-Gītā as it is, chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person, text number 11. Please, let's chant the Sanskrit verse together. Yatanto yoginas chainam pashyant yatmanyavastam yatanto pi akratatmano nainang pashyant yachetasa. Now responsibly, yatanta, endeavoring, yogina, transcendentalist, cha, also, ainam, this, pashyanti, can see, atmani, in the self, avasthitam, situated, yatanta, endeavoring, api, although, akrita atmana, those without self-realization, na, do not, ainam, this, pashyanti, see, achetasa, having undeveloped minds. So notice the word yatanta appears twice, endeavoring. We learned in chapter 6 that yoga means you have to try, you have to work at it. It's not some passive thing. You have to, as it says here, endeavor. And especially in bhakti yoga, you have to endeavor. Those like you do so much work in the pujari room. You're not just being idle, right? So much you have to go here, you have to go there. Make the tray, do this, do that. You're doing lots of activity in the back of that pujari room, right? And when you do the arti, you're so much endeavor, light the incense, then you have to count the circles, and you have to ring the bell, and then you have to purify, and there are mantras, and you have to remember to go in order, and then you have to watch the lead pujari, so that when he turns around you, so much endeavoring. In bhakti yoga, you have so much activity. We learned in chapters 3 and 5 that one who can see non-action in action and action in so-called non-action, that's the person who sees. So even though we are endeavoring in bhakti yoga, so many activities, that is actually akarma. It is transcendental. Even though we're engaged in so many activities, there's no material good or bad reaction. That's the definition of akarma according to Krishna in Bhagavad-Gītā. Not what somebody else says. They think akarma means no work. And that's why in the beginning of chapter 6, Krishna condemned those so-called akarmis. They think I have taken sannyas, now I don't do anything. Now Krishna says, nah. You have to work, you have to endeavor. But when you do things in bhakti yoga, those activities, those actions are actually akarma. That is the difference between the impersonal conception and the personal. The impersonal conception, they think you don't do anything. But the personalist says, no, I have so much work to do for Krishna. Just like my good friend Kamlesh. He's working hard producing CDs and DVDs. He's spending money and he's working. But all that activity is akarma. It's transcendental. Not the so-called Baba who's sitting and doing. No, he's actually working. He's actually acting. Here is the real akarmi, right here. Endeavoring for Krishna. Okay, let's look at the translation. Please repeat. The endeavoring transcendentalist, come on, who are situated in self-realization, can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. So this phrase, situated in self-realization, begins with Lord Chaitanya's definition. Jivera Swarupahai Krishnara Nityadas. I am so glad that you have learned that verse. Very good. Lord Chaitanya says, self-realization begins from here. That I see myself as Krishna's eternal servant. At last week's program, Kamlesh quoted Prabhupada. And he said, become the servant of the servant of the servant. That is Lord Chaitanya's teaching. But it begins with understanding that I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. That's where it begins. Then you want to become the servant, because our whole, Lord Chaitanya's whole philosophy is based on humility. You cannot become the servant of the servant of the servant without being humble. If you're not humble, you're going to say, I don't want to be anybody's servant. No. If somebody accepts that understanding that I'm the eternal servant of Krishna, then he can accept, okay, I want to become the servant of the servant of the servant. But you have to get that first understanding that I am the eternal servant. Otherwise, it won't make any sense. You're not going to tell somebody on the street, oh, you should be the servant of this. He's going to say, why? First, you have to establish, and that's why we read Bhagavad-Gītā. That's why Bhagavad-Gītā is the first book. Because first, you have to accept Krishna's God. First, you have to accept that I need to surrender. Then we can go on to Bhagavatam, other things. But Bhagavad-Gītā is the beginning. That's where it all starts. And I was preaching this in Santiago when I was there last month. I was hammering this point. I was telling all the devotees, you want to first of all learn Bhagavad-Gītā inside and out. And I told them a story that we are seeing now, new people, they're coming, but they want to read all these esoteric books. But ask them to quote a verse in Bhagavad-Gītā. They can quote all this other stuff, Radha and Krishna and all this, but they haven't learned Bhagavad-Gītā. And then I told them, you look at how Prabhupada writes his purports in Bhagavatam. What's he quoting? Bhagavad-Gītā. Even in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's quoting Bhagavad-Gītā because that's the basis of preaching. So therefore, if you want to be an effective preacher, you must learn Bhagavad-Gītā thoroughly. Like Rama knows Bhagavad-Gītā. She knows Bhagavad-Gītā better than me. So therefore she can be a very effective preacher because she has that foundation. Once you understand Bhagavad-Gītā and really see the whole thing, then Bhagavatam becomes easy. Because you'll see, oh, this verse of Bhagavatam is simply explaining what we learned in our beginning classes of Bhagavad-Gītā. It all begins from there. All right, let's look at Prabhupada's purport. Please follow along. There are many transcendentalists on the path of spiritual self-realization. But one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the living entity. The word yogina is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called associations of yogis, but they are actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. And we have seen over the past 10, 15 years that yoga now is like 7-Eleven. On every corner, there's a new yoga. Hot yoga, cold yoga, right? So, the thing is, Prabhupada, even back when Prabhupada was writing this Bhagavad-Gītā, he was familiar that people were taking up yoga, but they were taking it up, why? To keep the body fit so that they can enjoy, right? No. The purpose of yoga is self-realization, not to keep the body fit. That's a side benefit. The real purpose of yoga is to become self-realized. Okay. They have no other information. They are called yatantopi akritatmana. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of the transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord, in other words, the bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. So, when you come to Prabhupada's movement, right from the start, you are being engaged in bhakti yoga. Because when you come, what are you doing? You're hearing. That's the first item of bhakti. Or you're chanting. That's the next item of bhakti. And you always heard me make a joke. The 10th item of bhakti, what is it? Prasadanam, eatanam. Right? That's the 10th, according to me. I add one. But even that is bhakti yoga. And just by that alone, you can become self-realized. So as soon as you come to Prabhupada's movement, your self-realization has begun. Because the process, the way Prabhupada has designed it, it's so powerful. Every item of Prabhupada's program is so powerful. We recently studied at a Nectar of Devotion class last year at Krishna Prem's house. The 5 items of all the 64 items of devotional service, the 5 which are the most powerful. Going to a holy place like Kundan-loka or a new Kurukshetra-loka. We were there last Saturday. Is that all right if I call you? New Kurukshetra? Nueva Kurukshetra, or Chokta Kurukshetra, right? And what was the other one? Chanting the holy name, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-Gītā, worshiping the deity. You go to Prabhupada's temples, deity worship is very prominent. And you get credit just, even you're on the altar. Very nice. But even if you don't go on the altar, just watching the arati, you are making advancement. Okay? So these items of bhakti that Prabhupada has hand-picked, these items. So as soon as someone comes in contact with Prabhupada's movement, you're going to make rapid advancement. It's the fast track, you all know. On the 91 and all, they have that fast track lane. ISKCON is the fast track lane. Just hang on and don't get thrown out. Somehow or other, stay in the fast track lane. Everybody chant the Maha Mantra.